Hello, this is Pam Dix from IBBY in the UK. I'm talking to you from lockdown London about my main children's literature focus at the moment, research that I've been doing for several years with my colleague and friend Ruth Thomson, herself the author of over 150 children's information books. We are looking at the ways in which illustrations are used in children's information, or non-fiction if you prefer that term, and we were inspired by the resurgence of interest and sales of children's information books in the UK, and I suspect in other parts of the world. A starting point for us was Flying Eye publication of Shackleton's Journey in 2014. So Shackleton's Journey, a strange choice of subject, was surpassed all expectations in sales and prizes and was very popular in the UK. What I'm interested in here and in this book and in others is the intersection or interaction between words and pictures and the cultural aesthetic of this book and the others I'll be talking about. So Shackleton has white spaces, huge seas. You can see here the great ice flow of the Antarctic with the tiny ship marooned in the bottom left-hand corner. Visual lists of the equipment needed on the journey. You can see everything can be counted out and measured. It's a powerful and engaging read, very different to earlier information books. And we realised, Ruth and I, that while much is written about how picture books work, there is comparatively little written about the ways in which illustrations contribute to information books. We've looked at this from a subject point of view, looking at books about history, nature, biographies, and also from the kinds of roles that illustrations play, showing change over time, reconstructions, showing things which can't be seen like sound, or giving instructions as in a craft or cookery book. What we've done is very broad-ranging. In this talk, I'm concentrating only on one aspect, the ways in which illustrators represent the world and make it visually exciting and engaging. I'll be sharing some highlights in this section. Like many of the aspects of children's books that we've talked about, much starts with the early Russian children's books. And I'd love to hear from you about Russian illustrators who explored the ideas of showing the Russian citizen their own country. Here we look at ALEKSANDRA Petrova from Moscow to Bukhara about the journey of 4 young pioneers. How do illustrators represent a country and its people without stereotyping or simplifying? How do illustrators create a sense of place and people? How is the culture and country and lifestyle of a country captured? The illustrator's challenge is to make the unfamiliar recognizable, to encourage comparison with familiar worlds at the same time as showing difference and engaging a dialogue with the reader. This was particularly important at a time when travel, television, and other visual medias were not widely available. Then, the lack of images and of varied viewpoints made illustrated books of key significance in a child's world. This has totally changed with the bombardment of images from around the world that can be found in modern media. But the reader still needs to have some critical awareness of the image shown and the perspectives represented. A sense of wonder still needs to be created. Underpinning so many of these books is the expressed desire to explore the idea of common humanity, that underneath cultural and other difference, children and families want much the same. And I just want to share with you a quote from Fyodor Rodjankovsky, who said, "The illustrated book, little by little, leads young people to a sense of citizenship in the world and should present more and more complex pictures of people and things." So as a starting point, I'm talking about picture puffins, which had a major impact on the children's market in the 1940s. They were influenced by Russian ideas to make cheap, well-produced books using well-known illustrators. Mitli and Lupe, 2 Mexican Indian children, in 1948, is illustrated by Jose Sancha, is an unexpected subject. But Sancha was known to puffin. Interestingly, he'd been a sleeper agent for the Soviet Union in Mexico, and explaining his choice of subject. The books are graphically very interesting in layout, the colour palette reflective of the Mexican environment, and show full details of artifacts and life. At a similar time in France, the publisher Père Castor produced the influential series Père Castor Peoples. Poutsiak, the Little Snowflake, in 1948, was written and illustrated by Paul-Émile Victor, himself a polar explorer. The artistic style is a cross between the cartoon and the art style of the Eskimo or Inuit people. In the 1950s, in the UK and elsewhere, series dominated, often with twin characters for reasons that I don't quite understand. I'm looking here at the Ladybird Flight series, illustrated by Jack Matthews, published between 1958 and 1962. Just looking at the covers here, I'm not looking at inside the books, you can see the stereotyping of images that we might expect from that time. You've got iconic buildings for the USA and India, Africa is a very stereotypical image, and the Holy Land is a pastoral scene. But Matthew's skill is in his detailed drawings. In the 1970s, things became somewhat more experimental, I think. And Carol Barker here spent 3 months in India researching this book, Arjun and his village in India. Her immersive experience was sponsored by Oxfam, and she was living in a village in Rajasthan. The village is described through the eyes of a 12-year-old boy and shows family life, faith, school, and home. The style picks up on colours of India with the illustrations placed on clean white backgrounds. The images are very warm and sympathetic. In the USA at the same time, there was a strong move amongst writers, artists, and publishers to celebrate the history of the African American community, and particularly its roots in Africa. This is something that I've done a lot of research on, is particularly relevant at the moment. Preeminent in the move to create more diversity of representation were the award-winning Leo and DIANE Dillon. The couple would become agents of change for the representation of cultural diversity and were recognized as preeminent illustrators for young people. Most of their work is the result of research rather than travel. Their strength was in collaboration. Working as a couple, they developed the idea of the third artist, a collaboration that resulted in work that is different to what either would do as an individual. Together, they had a versatility in creating different styles, and they used whatever medium or technique felt appropriate to their subject. In ASHANTI to ZULU, they bring authentic and detailed portraits of 26 African tribes in a very celebratory way to an audience interested in finding out more about this world. The pictures are beautifully composed, warm with the colours of the earth and rich with details of tribal life. They capture the variety, cultures, and vitality of African countries and display the detailed research which is key to the book's success. Each picture includes a house, a man, a woman, a child, an artifact, an animal, a bird, and a landscape representative of that area. The work uses borders and frames, making each illustration feel like an individual work of art. And then I'm going to move on now to individual artists who develop their own series about countries, reflecting their own artistic style and interest at the same time as communicating real information in closely observed detail. I'm going to start with Mitsumeshi Anno, a Japanese illustrator and writer of children's books, and the Hans Christian Andersen Award winner in 1984. Anno was a teacher who enjoyed developing puzzles for his students, and these experiences undoubtedly influenced his artistic style and playfulness. His wordless picture books feature different countries with small detailed figures and elaborately imagined locations. In these journey books, a tiny character can be spotted travelling around each country. Rich illustrations which include references to famous and iconic landmarks and culture and history. At first glance, these books all look the same. Countries are made uniform by his approach, but closely detailed observation reveals the specifics, the nuances and details of each country. There are many intertextual references and subtle jokes and humour. His illustrations are pen and ink and watercolour and intricately detailed. Miroslav Sasek was born in Czechoslovakia and trained as an architect before working as a graphic designer and artist. He is famous for This Is series, a series of 18 books about different countries published between 1957 and 1974. His work is graphically stunning and visually exciting with interesting page layouts and a mixture of quirky but accurate representation of buildings and cityscapes. Martin Salisbury calls him a visual thinker. His expression of a sense of place is more than a series of pictures of famous landmarks. It includes very fine detail, accurate representation of buildings. Sasek spent months living in the city he was writing about, and he kept close to the principles of outdoor painting. His views alternate the panoramic with closely observed detail, and they have a retro feel which has made them very popular now. Then moving on, Franny Lesak, who was born in America but currently lives in Australia. She spent part of her life living in the Caribbean, which is the setting for a number of her books. They record aspects of the environment, the culture and the lifestyles in these islands. Her almost naive or folk art style perfectly fits with the vibrancy of the Caribbean, with bold use of colour, and her visual storytelling encourages closer looking at the very detailed images. Christopher CORR is a UK illustrator. Like Lesak, his books are very colourful, and indeed his emotive use of colour gives a sense of joy in life for his readers. His work is vibrant and very appealing and intuitive. His subject matter is greatly influenced by his travels, and his information is shared through his visual storytelling. He works in gouache painted on handmade paper. This book, All Aboard for the Bobo Road, is set in Burkina Faso, and for this he collaborated with Stephen Davis, who was living in this northern Sahel region of the country, and he's captured the cultural vibrancy of the area, and here you can see the Guernsey houses as the bus travels through the stunning scenery. And then I'm going to move on and backwards in a way to photography, which has always been a tradition in children's literature and has made a huge contribution to children's knowledge and understanding of the world. Here I'm only going to be looking at the game changers, the photography books that use photographs in imaginative and exciting ways. There is an acknowledgement of the role of the design team as well when we look at photography books. So starting here with Anna Rukin Brick, who's a Russian-born Swedish photographer and journalist. She contributed significantly to the growing use of photography in children's books, and her book Älekari about the Sami people, published in 1951, is credited with being the first Swedish picture book with photos of everyday life of a child in a continuous story. The book is based on photography work commissioned by UNESCO with the aim of promoting tolerance by introducing children from different countries to each other's lives. She went on to publish 19 children's books in a series, Children Everywhere, each about the life of a particular child in a different country. Interestingly, the text for 9 of these was written by Astrid Lindgren. Significantly in these books, the photographs take up a very large portion of the pages, with the text only about 4 or 5 lines at the bottom of the page. The reader's eyes concentrates in detail on the photograph, and there are many close-ups of the children's faces. Also in the 1950s, Dominique Darbois, a photojournalist, produced 20 books for the French Children of the World series for the publisher Fernand Nathan, later Edition Nathan. Darbois was noted for her humanist approach to her studies of people, especially children in remote or exotic places. Darbois' photographs are important for their veracity and the engagement that this brings. Each book in the series is designed in a style appropriate to the country in which it is set. A 2-colour approach is used in the design, and the colours chosen are ones appropriate to the environment. Here in Atuna, the Little Eskimo, the colours used are cold ones, blue and black. The decorative approach used as part of the design is similarly appropriate. The main child featured in the story dominates the cover, almost like a paper cut. The page layout is highly imaginative and feels very contemporary, almost a photo montage. In Atuna, the graphic designer Pierre Potier is actually acknowledged on the title page. You can see here within the shape of the igloo the boxes of text and photos to explain its construction. Then moving on to colour, Ifeoma Onyeafulu is a Nigerian-born but UK-based photographer and writer whose approach embeds her photographs in the layout and design of the whole page. Her model was developed in Ayers for Africa, published by Francis Lincoln, and it's an approach and style that Francis Lincoln has continued to use in all of their photographic country series by Onyeafulu and others. She has won many awards for her work and for her contribution to counteracting the negative stereotypical images of Africa, which were present in many children's books. Onyeafulu used her village and her family to create very positive images of the culture of Eastern Nigeria. And whilst now it would be unusual to represent Africa in only one country, it was at the time of publication a groundbreaking book. Its bright, colourful images and use of traditional Nigerian design to make the borders and cultural references gave real opportunities for readers to learn the inside story of the country. And then moving on from one country to comparisons between 2 or more countries, I'm going to start with Jeannie Baker, a British-born illustrator living in Australia, who works in collage. Mirror, in 2010 published by Walker Books, is a totally wordless exploration and comparison of the lives of 2 families, one in Australia, where she lives, and one in Morocco, where she spent 3 months living with a family. All the illustrations she uses were agreed with this family before the book was published. Page by page, we see the lives of 2 boys and their families, which on one level are very different, but she shows the parallels between them. The exploration of lifestyles, landscapes, clothing, etc. show us that families, wherever they are, have the same needs. They mirror each other. She uses collage materials collected during the trip to Morocco to create the very textured feel of the pages in the book. It opens out both ways so the pages can sit side by side for comparison, and the 2 parts are designed to be read simultaneously, one from the left and one from the right, as the Arabic script would be. Shirin Adel is a British-based but Iranian, brought up in Iran artist, and she's collaborated with the writer Naima bint Robert on several books which look at aspects of Muslim life for young children. Both Ramadan Moon and Mabruk, A World of Muslim Weddings, look at traditions around the world, and are very celebratory examples of books about Muslim culture. The books are keen to show that Islam is not a monoculture, but very rich with nuance and difference, as shown in her colourful collage art. And then I'm going to move on to books which look at multiple countries in one book, and start with Peter Speer, a Dutch-born but American-based a children's illustrator, multi-award winning. People here is a celebration of the diversity of the world's cultures, approached through its people and their characteristics, through lifestyles, homes, etc. His approach is lively and jokey, with pages full of character and action and minute details to observe and compare. Some of the characterizations of people are stereotypical and do not fit with 21st century views, but his purpose is always to point to different perspectives. He uses pen, ink, and watercolor, and you can see that his consummate skill as an artist in these detailed pages. A rather different approach is in Mat La Mothe, This Is How We Do It, One Day in the Lives of 7 Kids from Around the World, published in 2017. La Mothe is an animator, and this book follows and compares the lives of 7 real children from around the world. It takes a single day in their lives and compares details of when they wake, eat, go to school, and so on. But what La Mothe has done is very different. His illustrations are based on actual photographs, which are the basis of the portraits of each child and situation. They're then drawn in a flat, matte style, which is very focused on drawing attention to details. And then my final section, or almost my final section, is looking at the movement of peoples around the world and how this is a way in which countries can be looked at, both the country left behind and the outsider's view of the new country, whether as refugees or migrants. Political perspectives, cultural sensitivities, often paring illustrations down to the essential message, attempt to encourage engagement, empathy and sensitivity in the reader. I'm going to start with the Irish illustrator P.J. Lynch and his illustrations for Amy Hest's When Jessie Came Across the Sea, which won the Kate Greenaway Medal in 1997, telling the story of the archetypal American experience for so many turn-of-the-century immigrants, the journey from a shtetl in Eastern Europe to the making of a new life in the States through hard work and struggle. The focus of his illustrations is on courage, and his dramatic watercolour and gouache focus on the faces, candlelit or sunlight, all show yearning, hope, loss and dignity. In 1993, the Chinese-American writer and illustrator Alan Say published Grandfather's Journey, about his grandfather's journey across the Pacific to America. It opens with his grandfather in traditional dress, which you can see in the smaller picture, and then he sets off to see the world and is shown in this oversized Western coat on board a steamship across the Pacific. The family then shift back and forth between California and Japan, the father not able to be at home in the States, the children not able to settle in a Japanese village. It is a book that explores the issues of being between two cultures. It's driven by the images, which are light-filled with vibrant colors and very minimal text. It won the Caldecott Medal in 1994. And then finally, just a small example of books published within individual countries reflecting their own art styles. I'm just looking here at one book by Tara with the Gond artist Baju Shyam, who travelled to London for a commission to paint the walls of an Indian restaurant. And whilst there he spent 2 months, he worked on the London Jungle Book, a reverse journey to Kipling's, a reverse look at colonialism. His commentary on life in the Western city is a mixture of innocence and sophisticated understanding, and he brings his cultural markers into a comparison with the markers of London city life. He makes London almost an exotic jungle using his traditional art style. And Geeta Wolf says of his artistic gift that he has insight and can marvel at the new and bring a sense of wonder to what he sees. This is the cover illustration here, where you can see when 2 times meet, Big Ben and the cockerel, to show how time is managed. So this is just a very brief introduction to what I've been doing, but from this variety of approaches, I hope you can sense particularly the drive to create empathy and understanding about the other, and a sense of wonder in the world. Thank you.